Growing up, I was one of those girls who always had a boyfriend, talking about an identity. I didn't know who I was outside of a relationship. I had to learn how to be alone with Emmanuela and be okay with being alone with Emmanuela. Because oftentimes we stay in toxic relationships because we just don't want to be alone. And the one thing that I had to learn is like, we're asking other people to be with us when we don't want to be with ourselves. I didn't want to be with you.
Oh, hello and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationships
from surviving to thriving. If this is your first time joining us, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the like button, hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes.
Today on TMC, we have a very special guest, Emmanuela Rodenberg with Relationship Blueprint.
My story began, a few years ago. I found myself sitting in my car nearby a neighborhood store, looking at my boyfriend lying to me. He told me he was going out of town, but something on the inside of me told me that that wasn't the truth.
Wow.
And I'm watching him and he's telling me, yes, I'm on the road, I'm stopping, and telling me all these stories while I'm right there looking at him.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And sitting in that car, I just had a moment where I just really sat with myself saying, wow, when did I become that girl? When did I become that girl that really had to sneak around and to check up on a man? And really I don't deserve this. I deserve better. I knew that I deserved a man who was going to honor me, a man who wasn't going to lie to me, that I deserve better. But I didn't know how. Growing up, I didn't see a lot of healthy relationships. I didn't see people who were thriving in marriages. The marriages I saw were mostly couples who looked like they were dying together. And I grew up thinking, if that was marriage, I didn't want any part of it. I did not want any part of it. So I knew if I had any chance of having a healthy, thriving relationship, I needed a relationship blueprint. I needed to know what I needed to do to have a healthy, thriving relationship. So since I didn't have one, I decided to become a student of relationships. So I really just started researching, talking to a lot of different couples, because I really wanted to know. Because I'm a firm believer, when you grow up in an environment and you see something, one of two things end up happening. Either you end up repeating the cycle of what you see, of what you saw, or you do something totally different. And most people, although they're saying, I don't want to repeat the cycle, they find themselves repeating the cycle.
Absolutely.
And over time, over the past few years, I really became really curious. Why was that happening? And I learned it was because until you truly understand something, you get to the root cause of it, you really will end up repeating it. Just saying you don't like something is not enough to keep you from repeating the cycle. So I decided to teach women how to create a blueprint for the relationship and the life that they desired. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Wow. So Emmanuela, you're married?
I am.
You have children?
I am. I've been with my husband. We've been together almost 16 years. We're going on 13 years of marriage. We have two amazing, beautiful girls. Yeah, so definitely we're doing it.
Awesome. And so you help women to make better decisions, or decide a better way to decide who to date and who to marry, right? Let's talk about that a little bit. So what are some of the greatest challenges that you think women face when deciding who to date, who to marry? What are some of the greatest challenges?
I think one of the greatest challenges that I've seen over the past, 15 years working with women and couples as well. I say I want to work with women, but I find myself that I do couples work. And when I do couples work, I bring in my husband because the male perspective is very important. Men need to know that they're not alone. So it's always great to have that male perspective. And I work with men as well who just said, the Lord said they assigned me to you. I'm like, okay. So, but one of the first things that I really tell couples is individuals is they don't know who they are. Because in order to be able to choose who's going to be a good fit for you, you have to first know who you are as an individual. Who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? And then people think they can skip that step because they hear it so often. So they think it's a cliche. Go work on yourself, know who you are. But that is really the first step. You have to know who you are as an individual, who you are as a single woman, as a single man, before you can know who's going to be a good fit for you. Why is that important for you to first know yourself? I always use the analogy. It's like, I'm a woman, so we would like to buy shoes. So it's like me going to the mall and, trying to buy a pair of shoes. If I don't know my shoe size, I'm going to go to the 6, the 7, the 8. I'm going to be trying on a lot of different shoes before I determine what's a good fit for me. Wow. But if I know I'm an 8, so I can go straight to the 8 section. I still gonna have to try on a few pair of shoes, but I don't have to go through so many shoes trying to figure the right fit. So if I don't know my shoe size, I'm going to be going through a lot. And a lot of times when we don't know ourselves, we get lost in the relationship because we end up asking our partners, who do you think I am? Do you think I'm beautiful? Do you think I'm valuable? You trying to find you looking for that person to place identity on you that you don't already have for yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So true.
And I'm listening. I'm like, wow. I mean, because thinking about that analogy, someone going to the shoe store and trying all these shoes. I mean, you're wasting a lot of time.
A lot of time.
And it just reminds me in relationships how people waste a lot of time.
They do.
It's crazy, man. This is awesome. I love it.
It was like, well, wow, we do that. That's exactly what we do. We just keep going from relationship to relationship, trying to find out what fits. But you talked about a person having an identity before, knowing who they are, knowing what works for them and what they need. Yeah. What would be some of the basic steps or some tips that you would give to someone if they say, Emmanuela, how do I do that? Where do I start? If I don't know myself, but I think I do, where do I start?
Well, the first, the process, the blueprint that I help people work through, when people come to me, I help them create their relationship blueprint. And I do that through a 3-step process. The first thing I do is to really help you create a vision for yourself, create a vision for your life, where you are now, where do you want to go? It's like having that roadmap. Because before you can get to where you want to go, you have to first know where you are. Yeah. Where you are. So we first start with having the vision. What vision do you have for yourself as an individual, first and foremost? And what vision do you have? Do you see yourself in the future? Like you say, you want a spouse. What does that look like? Paint me a picture. What are you looking for? When you think about the future, you think about the spouse and the relationship and the marriage and the family, what does it look like? And we sit down, we write down every detail. Every detail, no detail is too small. And once we do that, we have a vision. The next thing I help them do is really I walk them through an exercise to help them identify their core values. What are your core values? Let's get beyond the surface things, because a lot of times we're choosing based on our preferences and not our core value. Who are you beneath the shell? And that's why a lot of marriages are falling apart, because you don't know who you're marrying and you don't even know yourself. So we gotta find out who your core value. Because those are your principles, your guiding, because that's what's going to, it affects every decision that you make. Everything is on your core values. And most people don't know what their core values are. Your core values are your non-negotiables. You have to know those. And then from there, we start the vetting process, because once you know you have a vision and you know your values, then you can start to vet properly. So that's kind of like the 3-step process that I work with my clients to help them create that blueprint.
So you help your clients create a relationship blueprint.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I was thinking about it. It's not only just a relationship blueprint, but it's a identity blueprint. I mean, this is so amazing, because I mean there's so much identity theft going on right now, where people identity has been lost through parenting, through their upbringing, and people telling you this is what you should do, this is what you should wear, this is how you should look, this is how your hair should be, this is this, and everybody's creating an identity for us. I mean, this is so awesome, and I really love this. I love that this identity, this relationship blueprint is amazing. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
That is awesome. That's awesome. So let's talk about this. You shared with us the story about how you watched a boyfriend lie to you, as you said in the car talking on the phone. But
Yeah.
you also told us that you have now been married for some wonderful years now. So talk about some lessons that led you from there to here. What were some lessons that you personally learned in between those areas, from the boyfriend lying to the awesome man that you are married to today? What are some lessons you personally learned that someone else can learn from?
That's a great question. The first thing that I really had to do, I had to learn how to be alone. I had to learn how to be alone with Emmanuela and be okay with being alone with Emmanuela. Because, growing up, I was one of those girls who always had a boyfriend, talking about an identity. I didn't know who I was outside of a relationship. My identity was always someone's girlfriend, the identity thing that you talked about. So the first thing I had to learn was to be okay being by myself. Because oftentimes we stay in toxic relationships because we just don't want to be alone. And the one thing that I had to learn is, like, we're asking other people to be with us when we don't want to be with ourselves. I didn't want to be with you.
Oh,
Can I be by myself and enjoy my own company? Can I be okay being alone and know that I am enough? And can I find things to do that I enjoy by myself and be okay with that? So that was the first step, is being okay with being by myself. And that was a process. It was hard. I didn't know what to do with myself. So that was the first step. It's like, be okay being by yourself. And I truly believe in the journey of being married is when you get to a place in life where you're okay and you're satisfied and you're content being by yourself. That's when you're ready for a spouse. It really is, because oftentimes we think that spouse is going to complete us. They're going to make us happy. They're going to do all these things.
come on.
And I had to realize, if you don't have those things as a single, you can't bring them into a relationship. If you're not happy, you're just going to be an unhappy wife. You're going to have to find happiness, because you bring that happiness into the relationship. So that was the first step, being okay being with yourself.
Wow.
And then you have to set the standard of how you want to be treated, because no one is going to treat you better than you treat yourself. And in that period of being single, that you really get to treat yourself to the things that you really want to do. Take yourself out to dinner, go to the movies, take care of yourself, and fall in love with you. And because you set the bar, you set the tone. So those were some things that I really had to learn and work on. And it was not an easy process. I know I look back now and I'm like, but it took some work. It really did. But it was necessary. It was necessary because it made me a better wife. It really did.
Awesome. I'm glad you said that, because you just gave us 2 tips that are key to preparing you for the relationship that you desire. And I think it's important for us to know, for everyone to know. You just spoke to the singles, and that's something that we need to take a note of right now on this podcast. Set a standard and know what works for you and what won't work for you, and be okay with that. Don't drop the bar for the sake of being in a relationship.
Right.
Wow.
I always say, if you compromise to get the relationship, you're gonna have to compromise to keep it. We start off wrong and we try to wiggle and we compromise, but then you get in the relationship and it's so hard. You're like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this person doing the things? Because you compromise. You compromise your core values. You like, when you're in a relationship, you're just kind of butting heads and you're fighting. You're trying to explain to the person, I don't know what's wrong in the relationship, but I just know it doesn't feel right. Something is off. It's because your core values are not being honored in the relationship. And your core values make up who you are. So there is no way you can be in this relationship, but if your core values are not being honored, if your core values are being violated, you're not at ease. There is something about, and sometimes you can't put your finger on it because you don't know what it is, but you just know. It's like, some people are like, oh, why are you making a big deal out of this? Well, it's a big deal for you because it's a core value. Yes. Like for me in that relationship that I talked about, one of my core values is honesty. So the fact that, and that's what drove me to sneaking around corners and borrowing cars, because my core value, I felt like I was being lied to. And for me, I couldn't be in the relationship. I couldn't be at ease. I didn't have peace because my core values was not being honored in that relationship. So what's your core value? What are your non-negotiables? And when you, from that, you set the standards. That's where you set the standards from, is from your core values, because people value different things. What I value may not be what somebody else's value, but you have to know what works for you, and you set the standards and set the boundaries according to that.
Exactly. And what's so interesting about this, we're Christians, and the Bible specifically say unequally yoked. And a lot of times we take that scripture and we look at the unequally yoked as we're doing God a favor if we're trying to yoke up with someone. But this just makes it very clear on how being unequally yoked, how it causes more damage to the relationship because of the core values are totally different.
Just like the yoke wood on the oxen, it's not going to be straight. It's going to be crooked. It's going to be misaligned. And that's what happens. The relationship is misaligned, and we're wondering why there's friction, why and not healthy conflict. We're talking about stuff that's ridiculous, such as lying. Like, that's not healthy conflict. I'm lying to you about where I am and what I'm doing and all this. So we're wondering why that happens, and it's because we are unequally yoked, or the line is not set. The standards are not there. So when we talked about that, and Emmanuela, you painted the picture for us so great.
Beautifully.
As you were talking, I thought about that person who's listening to this podcast, and they're going to say, Shante, Cedric, Emmanuela, I get it. I didn't set the standards. I'm just now recognizing what my core values are and what's honorable to me. So I find myself in this place where I feel stuck, where I feel like I'm in a relationship, a marriage, I'm dating, whatever. And I feel like it's just not working. These things aren't being met. I feel stuck. What would your advice be to that person?
Well, we're talking about the advice I'm going to give to singles is very different than the advice I would give to married, because once you're married, you're under covenant. So
exactly.
But if you're dating, I think dating is an opportunity for you to really get those things ironed out, because that's why I really love working with singles, because I want to teach you to get it right from the start. Because working with married couples, I see all the issues and all the problems. I said, we could have fixed it on the front end. If we could have just addressed these things on the front end, you wouldn't be having these things right now in the back end. And now, goodness. So for singles who feeling like you're stuck, you're in a relationship, well, you didn't, because you can only do better when you know better. Because oftentimes we just didn't know. That's why I had to create the relationship blueprint, because growing up, everyone expects you to get married, but no one really gives you the blueprint. No one really tells you what to do, how to properly vet, get to know yourself, set the standard. They throw out the words, but no one ever tell you, how do I do this thing? How do I figure this things out? Because as human, we're so complicated. You trying to figure someone else out, trying to figure yourself out is enough work. So I think it's just take a step back and really, like I said, who are you as an individual? Ask yourself the question, who am I? What vision do I have for myself? And once he figures out his process, who he is, what his core values are, then you can have an honest conversation. Really honest conversation. If you need to get some help or some coaching, like, we want to make this work. We need some help. We want to move. We're here. We really like to move to this next stage here. How do we get there in a healthy way? How do we create healthy boundaries? How do we start to do it God's way and not trying to figure it out as we go along? Because God has a blueprint for relationship and for marriage. And oftentimes we think we can have godly marriages and leave God out the whole picture when he designed that. When he designed marriage.
Doesn't make sense, right?
It doesn't make sense. We're trying to leave him out of his own thing that he created. So that for the singles who are dating, I would really say, get to know who you are as an individual first, get to know the you before you become a us or a we. So that way you know who you are. So it's not two half of people coming together, but it's two whole people who've done the work on themselves and they're committed to making the thing work. And for the married couples, if you find yourself in that situation, because even as married people, we're still growing. You know, I'm not the woman I was 13 years ago, 15 years ago when I met my husband. I'm continue evolving and I'm growing. And as I'm growing, one of the things that I always make sure is that we're growing together. Because I see so many couples, one person is growing and the other person is not. And I think that's what the disconnect. And over time, you realize one day, I don't know this person anymore. We no longer have anything in common, because I had this growth mindset. I'm expanding myself. I'm working on me, and they're not. So make sure that you're growing together as a couple. And when you see that you're off, you don't know what to do, get some help. Get some coaching, go to some counseling, and be open. Discover these things together, because I always say marriage is not about a feeling. It's about the commitment, the covenant that you made. Because if it's about a feeling, I don't think anybody would be married, because some days you just don't feel like. And get help soon. Don't sit on it. Oftentimes we wait too long. Like something bothered us 5 years ago, and we're just now talking about it. And it's like, as soon as you realize there's something going wrong. And I said, be honest in your marriage, be truly. And I tell my husband the first time we got married, because I knew me dating, you know, sometimes I'm shy and reserved, believe it or not. So I would hold things in, but I learned quickly that's like one of the biggest poison in a marriage, when you hold things and you don't talk about, especially as women, we'll let it build up and they'll start showing up in our attitudes and we'll just get short. But I learned, I'm like, babe, you know, you may not like what I have to say, but I have to tell you what's on my heart. I have to tell you how I'm feeling, because I don't want it to grow in my heart into resentment. I don't want my heart to harden towards you. So I want to tell you about it so we can talk about it and address it. And that was really key for me, because otherwise I would sit on the thing and don't talk about it, and just it does a lot of damage.
Absolutely.
You are helping singles and married couples.
You said poison. That's the word you said. I'm just gonna, I ain't gonna say nothing. I'm just gonna be quiet. But it's poison because it's killing the relationship. When it's festered, you've been unhappy or dissatisfied with something for 5 years and haven't said anything, and resentment is building and it's festering and is now showing up in other ways. It's poison. I love the way you said that. It is poison.
It does. It eats away at the marriage. It does. You don't realize the damage that it's doing. And it start off small, because it's never the big thing that break up a relationship. No. It's the accumulation of the small things that you never address, and it just builds up. It builds up, and then one day, and by the time you go to address it, you don't know where to start, because the problem started 5 years ago. And when you're trying to explain to your spouse who don't like, what are you talking about? And you've been sitting on this thing for 5 years, and you're trying to take them back, and there's like, and there's a disconnect.
Create a spider web.
Exactly. So you have to address it. You're committed to growing and staying together. You have to have the difficult conversations.
You said a word, and you said this word multiple times tonight. So this is more focused for the single. You said the word vetting, the vetting process.
Ooh, the vetting process. The vetting process really start with the core values, because what I do, I give my client, I have this exercise where I have so many words, and we narrow it down to like your top 3 values, your top 3 non-negotiables. Because the first thing, when you're out there dating, people are like, hey, what do I ask? What do I do? How do I know who's a good fit for me? And one of my favorite things is, how do I know this person is going to be a good fit for me 5 years from now, 10 years from now? The longevity. And it's really, it's a big unknown. It is. It's a big unknown. So I just walk, and there are things that I love. I'm a student of relationship. I love all things relationship. I'm really like, that you can tell, that's my passion. So it's just learning how to date. When you're out with a person, it's like hearing the things that they're not saying. And you're vetting from your values. Once a person identified their values, and if I know that one of my core values is honesty, for example. So when I'm vetting someone and I'm asking questions and I'm trying to get to know you, so I'm going to ask you questions to really see how important is honesty for you. Like, I'll see it in the little things, like, and I'll tell you an example. When I was dating my husband, like, he had a company car, he had a gas card. And I remember, I used to say, babe, can you put some gas in my car? He's like, he'll give me his card. I said, well, let's just use the company's card because that's free gas. He would say, no, that's the company's card. That's the company's card. That's not my card. You can have my card. Yeah. And that time, that's really what caught my attention. I tell people, like, I don't think my husband was my type, but it was his integrity, his character that really got my attention. Yeah. And as I was vetting, I was not vetting from really preference. I was really vetting from my core values. Like, can I live with this man? Do I want to have children with this man? Do I want my children to have his character? So when you're vetting for marriage, you got to look at those things. Sometimes we're looking at how tall he is, how fine he is. Girl, those things don't.
Yes, come on.
You have to really vet from what's important to you. Yeah. So when you know how to properly vet, you know the right questions to ask, you know what to look for in his mannerism, you know the character traits to look at, you know what to look for in the family. I give you like a list of things to vet on based on what's important to you, because everyone values different things. So once we discover what your core values are, we create a plan on how to vet.
That is awesome. You said, just like you said for yourself, you need honesty. And you're looking at someone and you said, I like the way you said, I don't think my husband was my type, but he is your type because he's honest. He has an integrity. And I am so glad that you have given all the singles the word to stop worrying about all the time what somebody looks like and think about, do they possess the values that you want to live with?
It's like the guy you're dating or the woman you're dating. Do you really want your daughter to be like this woman? Do you really want your son to be like this man? I mean, those are some things that we really need to think about. But most of the time when we're dating, we're just thinking about ourselves and not thinking about the children until 5 years into the marriage.
He's already there.
Right. And now there's problem with parenting because now we want to deal with this, but we didn't want to deal with it at first because we didn't think about all that. Only thing we can think about is ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that's what I help couples, and that's what I really help singles think about, because think about the whole picture. We're creating this blueprint, the vision. You got to think about all these things. And I think most people don't. That's why people just enter marriage. I say, after making Jesus Lord, the person you choose to marry is the single biggest decision you make in your life. And people just don't have enough knowledge, and they just take that decision so lightly. And it's tragic because so many other things that I think everything else in life depends on it. Your family, your community, everything. It's so vital. So I'm a big advocate for helping people build healthy, thriving marriages.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. And I'm telling you, you are dropping nuggets after nuggets, advice after advice. It's so much more we want to say, but all good things must come to an end.
You are doing an awesome, amazing work with singles, men and women, and you're helping marriages. You have given us nugget upon nugget upon nugget tonight. So we definitely want the listeners to be able to connect with you. How can they do that?
They can connect with me through my website. It's dearemmanuela.com. I also have a wives in training community as well. I have a global sisterhood. My goal is to really build a global sisterhood of women around the globe. And I have an international group of women from all over the world. And we get together, we study the word of God to really teach women to first love God, love themselves, so they can learn to love others. Because I think that's the process that I really teach, is that through, because once you have a relationship with God, you understand what true love is, because God tells us what love is. And when you learn to love God, he teaches you how to love yourself, because you know how valuable you are in his sight. And then from there, he said, love others as you love yourself, because if you don't love the self, you don't really know how to love others. So I really focused on teaching women how to really do that and to get to know the word of God. So if somebody was going to get married, I would say part of getting to know yourself, know your true identity, which is rooted in Christ. Get that relationship first and foremost. And if you say you're a believer, make sure the person that you are connecting with is a true believer as well. Not just the words, but their heart is really positioned after Christ, and that they really reverence God, because that was really key for me. That was another one of my non-negotiables, that my husband had to love God Because if I knew he loved God, I wouldn't have to worry about him loving me.
Come on.
Because I didn't want to have to worry about that. I didn't want to have to sit behind a grocery store and have to check up and do all these things. But because I wanted him to know that first and foremost, he's accountable to Christ first. And then he would know how to treat God's daughter. So really make sure that your relationship with God is solid, and the person that you are considering entering into that covenant with, that their relationship with God is solid as well, so that you guys can grow together in Christ and your marriage can really glorify God and advance his kingdom. So for people who are wanting to do that, who are wanting to know, how do I build that relationship blueprint, Emmanuela? Because a lot of people don't. And I had to learn myself. It took me years, but it was so worth it. It was so worth it, because I did not want to be in those marriages that looked like we were dying together. I want to enjoy my marriage. I want to be happy when my husband come home, and I want him to want to come home.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have. And I tell people, there are areas in my life that, I let things happen, but my relationship and my marriage, I said, no, I'm very intentional about the type of marriage that I want, the type of family that I want, the family legacy, and everything I do is centered around that. So I help people create their blueprint, because that is so important. So they can connect with me on dearemmanuela.com. There's a 5-step guide there, how to choose the right life partner, so they can download that for free if they want, and they can get up there and I'll set up a 30-minute discovery call with them to teach them how to start the process of creating the blueprint for their life and marriage.
Yes. On behalf of the TMC community, we'd like to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you. I had fun. You guys are really amazing. You guys made it really easy and fun. So it was a great conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we want to thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified each time we upload a video. And head on down in the comments and tell us what nugget did you take away from this video and how you plan to apply it to your life. If you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps us get the word out. We also want to invite you to head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing entrepreneurs and great leaders from all around the world every week.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.